Hi everyone, welcome to A's in Depth. I'm Josh Schaefer. On this edition of A's in Depth, we talk with Angler's second-year manager, Tom Holliday. He spent over 40 years coaching in college baseball, both as an assistant and a head coach, and he's taken his experiences and his relationships he made along the way into his time in the Cape Cod Baseball League. Here's our conversation with Tom Holliday. Second year as the Chatham Anglers manager. In your first year, you take the team on its deepest postseason run in 20 years. When you hear that, what does that make you think about?
Well, probably how fast it went, and maybe looking back at it like, 45-game season in a real short period of time. Maybe just how many guys improved in a short period of time. That's the personal satisfaction of it. And again, having everybody around here get into a playoff mode and have fun with it, and to see people my age get excited about something like that is kind of cool, because when you're in college baseball and you make it to the College World Series, it's your alumni and you don't even know who they are, and they come out of the woodwork when you make it to the College World Series. And there's the equivalent probably would be the College World Series to the championship round of the Cape. But this is a unique thing. This is like coaching an all-star team for 8 weeks rather than just coaching summer ball. And you really don't know how much influence you make on their careers. Some guys over the winter spent time thanking us, and kind of makes it worthwhile. Kind of makes you feel good.
If you could single out one thing that you learned from your first season and then you took into the off season, what would that be?
Well, I believe that you live baseball in the moment, and you got to have short memory, and you talk about those things and you talk about them. And I think coming out of college, the coaching part of it, you think about that, but you actually want your players in college to think about mistakes so that they don't make them again. You want them to learn the game, which requires thinking. And a lot of people think baseball is just a reactive sport, and of course Yogi Berra has a 1,000 lines about don't overthink baseball. And I disagree with that. I think that in order to get better, you have to be able to see what you did wrong and try to fix it. And that requires thought, not just action. And when you go back over and say, what'd you learn up here? Well, it's got to be attacked instantly the next day. You have to be an emergency room doctor. You got to fix the problems you see right away, because this is a short season, and you hope you don't step on the toes of the coaches that they came from. So the one thing I learned was walk gently, but carry a big stick.
The way that you approach a season, is it different from the way you do here than the way you did when you were coaching in college baseball?
Well, I know this. In college and having taken a responsibility, and I like the responsibility of picking the players. That was kind of like the one thing that kept me in college for such a long time. You get to pick the guys you coached. And when I came, I inherited half a roster from Mike, our general manager, and the other half I got to put together myself, and I really enjoyed that. Now, the surprising thing that hit me in the face last year was I didn't think 8 weeks was that much of a commitment. And then 4 or 5 guys right at the end of the season kind of bailed out on us for what I thought were silly reasons, only to be told that happens everywhere, that's part of Cape Cod, which I didn't know of. Having sent players up here, I just said, hey, if you're going to go, you're going to go play. If they don't want you, you don't play good, then they'll send you home. But you're going, you're making a commitment. And we would lay it out for them, and they would either go or they wouldn't go. So dealing with that and then putting a second team together, I kind of went towards the younger guys, thinking that they're going to be more committed to getting better themselves so that they can go back and have a really good sophomore or junior year at school, rather than that guy that might be coming up here to get signed, or coming up here, like the coach says you're going and you really don't want to go. I'd really rather go home and just sit around and relax than go play. I try to stay away from guys like that, and again, you get fooled. because some of the coaches know kids need to go play summer ball, and it's kind of a loaded question when you ask after a long baseball season, you want to go to Cape Cod, or you want to go home and lift weights and all this, or do you want to stay on campus? And I think that the kid that comes up here totally committed is hard to find.
You told us before your second season that this year you were going to be a little more committed to winning baseball games. One, why is that? And two, what does it take to win baseball games in the Cape League?
Okay, probably because of at the end of the road last year, I saw some different personalities emerge in the coaching ranks of this league. Guys that I knew for a long time, that had been coaching up here for a long time and coaching here longer than me. And being the rookie, when you hit 65 years old and somebody calls you a rookie, that's kind of weird in anything. But I was the rookie, and we were coaching kids on a daily basis, hoping to win. But if we didn't win, we tried not to get emotional. We didn't get moody about it, and we didn't point fingers. We just tried to fix it. If it didn't work, we tried to fix it. And we had some rough days early. We had some really good hitters struggle. Then they found it, and it paid off in a big way. And when I said I'm going to try to win more, I was hoping that maybe by game 15 that I'd have my team here, that we could actually start calling it a team, because I didn't like that body in and body out thing. And yet I think I've been as much of the body in, body out as anybody in the league, and I don't like doing that. But the bottom line was, I didn't want to make guys come up here and bunt and do the hit and run, try to fool guys with pitch selection, and because I see that in college baseball all the time. I didn't want to do that. I wanted pitchers to learn how to pitch. I still do. I want catchers to learn how to call the game. I still do. I want hitters to understand that with 2 strikes and a runner at third, give up that at bat and get the guy in instead of trying to hit a 390-foot home run. And again, that's why the staff that I have is here to maybe help sell those concepts. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But all in all, you want to win, because the people that brought you up here, quite frankly, put a lot of their time and effort into this program, and they want to win. So that's what I'm here for, to try to win.
The coaches on this staff that you've assembled over the course of the past 2 seasons now, pretty recognizable names. And here in your second season, Dennis Cook, who won a World Series, and Mickey Tettleton. When you're organizing your coaching staff, how do you go about that?
Well, it's kind of like surprising that people like Randy Whistler, Mickey Tettleton, Dennis Cook, Dalen Monet, last year, that they would want to come do this. And I think that, they're all guys that have college backgrounds, and they're all guys that have gone out and done it, to play in the big leagues for 12, 13 years. And Wiss was in pro ball for 10 or 12, coached a couple years in the big leagues, played on 4 college World Series teams. They've just about done everything you can do in the baseball world. To ask, hey, you want me to come up around your staff? And I was like, are you kidding? It was more like, are you sure you want to go up there with me? I mean, we're not living in Marriott suites, and we're not like living on the beach when we're not on the field. I mean, as we speak, Dennis Cook's out cutting the grass on the infield. Randy Whistler's cleaning up a dugout. Mickey Tettleton's raking home plate. What it says is more about their character. I just asked, and they said yes. Then I had to try to talk them out of coming by presenting to them what it really is. We do take high school buses that I haven't been on since high school, and I think some of them were still in existence when I came out of high school. And that's rough. These guys all spent time in the minor leagues, and it's like, this isn't the minor leagues, because today's minor leaguer doesn't travel like that. But it does teach kids a little bit of humility, which right now I think might be a good thing. But to your point, to why they're here, because they want to give something back.
Randy Whistler, like you mentioned, played on 4 consecutive College World Series teams and then was a coach for a long time. He knows what it takes to win in college and in professional baseball. You have Dennis Cook, who knows how to win as a player and as a coach, who had a long MLB career. And this year, you had Mickey Tettleton to your coaching staff in your second season on the Cape. How far back does your relationship with Mickey go?
Well, it's kind of it's an odd story, but our two young guys that worked under Coach Ward and I would run out and look at games in the evenings. And Jim Schwanke saw him one night and said, hey, you know, there's a kid named Tettleton, which I knew. I knew all about Mickey because his dad would pop in on business trips to Stillwater and say, hey, man, don't forget about my son Mickey. Well, I would write it down every time, and I had a pad, and I had Tettleton written on that pad about 5 times. Well, finally, we got a chance to see Mickey, and Schwank came back and he said, you know, he's pretty good. You might want to see him. And I said, well, what can he do? He goes, I'm not sure. You know, he's playing shortstop. He's got a really good arm. I said, can he run? Yeah, he's okay. So, again, it didn't sell me, but the first chance I got, when he was actually playing against another kid we were recruiting, I went and saw him. And the thing that stood out was Mickey's arm. He had a great arm. I didn't think he was a shortstop. I thought he was more of a third baseman if he was an infielder. And he was a switch hitter that I couldn't tell if there was power there or not because he had a good body, good, strong body. So it warranted another look. I still wasn't sold. And you got to remember now, scholarships are tight. And we're building at Oklahoma State at the time. And it was early in our build. And we had something to rebuild, believe me. And the third time I saw him, I said, yeah, let's just go for it. He plays hard. He's rugged. He's tough. I don't know where he's going to end up. And quite frankly, didn't know till later on in his career at OSU. And he sold us on the simple fact that he played the game for the right reasons.
When did you know that there was something really special about him when he was at Oklahoma State?
Well, I think the idea that, you know, he gambled on us like we gambled on him. And he came in as a shortstop. We don't tell him till you get him there that we're going to move him. So the first move was to third base. Okay, plenty of arm. Nah, he wasn't comfortable. First base, nah, he runs too good. So right field, because we could get him out there and just let him run, catch it, and really throw it. And he probably, as a freshman, might have been one of the better outfielders in the Big 8. And yet he hit 190. So 190 played every day for us and hitting a 2-hole because he had an incredibly high amount of walks. And our head coach at the time, he wanted on-base percentage. So Mickey was good. He was good. And never said a word. Never said a word. You knew he was cerebral. That, you know, I didn't know this, but I wondered, you know, like, is he taking all this in? Because he was getting a lot of input from the coaches. And sometimes too many cooks in the kitchen can screw up the soup. So his sophomore year, he got better, you know, 40, 50 points better, which made him a 250 hitter in college. Well, you know, is that special? No. But again, now maybe the best right fielder in college baseball and College World Series team, which quietly he was a leader. He was just one of those guys that led by example, played every day, hurt, sore, didn't matter. And a tough guy. Now we start bringing in guys in from all over the country. Mickey was our Oklahoma guy that you know, personified what we wanted. And he was taking on the personality of the coaching staff. He was kind of a tough, rugged guy. Didn't provide alibis for anybody. That's a good thing. Now you go back into his junior year, and now we're talking about a guy that's played 2 years, played a lot, still never said a word, just played the game hard the right way. When he did say something, everybody listened. And, you know, probably the first signal that we might have something special was, you know, we were about midway through the season, and our catcher caught every game. And we were like, hey, what's going to happen if Mark Poole ever gets hurt? Who's going to catch? Now, we had a bullpen guy, a freshman, that wasn't game ready. No way. So we figured we better break in a catcher, somebody else. Well, the two best candidates were our right fielder and our left fielder. So that day, in particular, you know, Coach Ward said, well, if we're going to find one, we better start now in batting practice. So I told Mickey, and we took BP that day, and shorts was not a normal thing. But in shorts, I said, Mick, put the catching gear on and catch the rest of the BP. And he looks at me like I was crazy. And some of the words he used, are like not real, common. And so I swallowed it and I said, just go back here. We just want to see what it looks like. We want to see what would happen in an emergency. And it's all right. So where'd I get my gear at? So you got to borrow it. We didn't have that much gear. So he borrowed, the bullpen gear. And he goes back there. And quite frankly, when I watched him, I said, he's really good. He's athletic. He can catch. Now, Mickey had glasses, and he had trouble keeping them under his mask. We were laughing about it. And so we're like, yeah, maybe. So the next day we tried Billy Ireland back there. And the next day, Coach says, well, who's the guy? And I said, it's Mickey without a doubt. And it never fails. As the baseball gods see things through, next game we play, our catcher gets hit on the thumb, a small fracture in his thumb, so we're stuck. Mickey catches maybe an inning of that game, and then the next Tuesday we play Oral Roberts against maybe one of the best pitchers in college baseball that year, Mike Moore, and they're all there to see Mike Moore versus our number one guy, Darren Dilks. And Mickey catches, and after the game, I bet you we had 50 cards from pro scouts that came to see the two pitchers, wanted cards filled out on Mickey Tettleton. And that was probably like the icing on the cake, that maybe we found the position for Mickey. Was it an accident? Yeah. Did we consider other guys? Sure. But he was the guy. And for him to be drafted in the 5th round that year as a catcher, hitting 290. Now, again, he was a College World Series guy, so he developed a profile. Was a total tribute to Mickey. And, you'd like to say you were a part of it? Sure, we were a part of it, and I made the suggestion, and I took the tongue lashing from Mickey for putting him behind the plate. And like I've told people, in public, but maybe 8 or 9 years later, I called him one day. We had 2 fundraisers in town where he was playing. I think it was in Baltimore. And the phone rang like 20 times. And the rule was don't call guys before 12 o'clock. They got to sleep. And it was a night game. So I called Mickey about 5 after 12, and it rang 15, 20 times. And he answers the phone. He's like, yeah. And I said, are you all right? He goes, yeah. And I said, so what are you doing? He goes, well, it takes me 2 pots of coffee to be able to get out of bed in the morning because you made me a damn catcher. And I said, nah, I didn't make you a catcher. He goes, yeah, you did. And I said, are you really complaining? I said, last time I checked, you just signed for $25 million. And he goes, what do you need? And 2 days later, after he got the 2 tickets, I hit him for some catching gear. And by the time he got back, we had a box that you could have jumped in yourself as a person full of catching gear for our players at OSU. So he didn't forget who he was.
Have you used experiences from your time as an assistant coach, as a head coach in college baseball, and taken those stories and experiences and kind of related them to your time here in Chatham?
Well, I'm not afraid of that. Probably if I see a guy that is maybe not appealing and he truly loves the game, a lot of kids say they want to play in the big leagues. It's an easy thing to say because it's on TV and it pays a lot of money, and I get that. But some guys, they're playing out of position, and a lot of times in college, you get stuck in a position that the coach needs you, so you got to go there and play. And it may not be where your true love is. And I always believe that if you can communicate and find out, what do you think you are? Who do you think you are? And if you can just listen to them, they'll talk to somebody. Because when a coach says that, the coach already has the answer. Your coach in school already knows where he needs you to play. And you're going to do it because you play for the coach. So, I a couple times up here, it's been more like, hey, you picked a moment and you asked that question. And I think Manoah last year was a guy that I had seen for 2 years stumble around being a closer, sometimes really good, sometimes really bad, an emotional wreck, a guy that was so out of control at times that he really agitated a lot of people. And I think it was hurting his professional appeal because you don't have to be a rah-rah, over-emotional, even though the big league guys do that, but they're already there. And the sit-down conversation with him early on last year was what do you really want to do? Because if you want to be a starter, we better get started. And you got a lot to learn, emotionally, physically, and you need to get some experience under your belt in a hurry. You're in your draft year next year. Well, guess what? Didn't matter what we said, he did it. And he gave it up to us. He gave us 7 weeks, because the first week I wanted to watch him. So we only had 7 weeks to finish him. And at the end of the summer, he was a well-polished starting pitcher. And I said it, that in my opinion, he's going to pitch in the big leagues for a long time as a starter. Well, you look around now and you start seeing guys like Georgie Arenas, who got ignored as a junior in college. So you start thinking, didn't do much good for him last year. And I watched Georgie, and I'm thinking, he's really a second baseman that's playing short. Well, there ain't a whole lot of difference. If somebody liked him professionally, he had 40 rounds to pick him. Didn't happen. So can he catch? Because he can throw. Maybe last year we let him pitch. Wasn't bad. Wasn't obviously enough for anybody to draft him. So, the idea that we may move him behind the plate at some time this summer when we finalize our roster, that's real. And we got a kid named Polkovich that, people told me he's second baseman. Well, I got news for you. He can play anywhere. And you don't know that unless you give him that opportunity. He can play anywhere on the field, and yet he's probably too short to put it first. He won't embarrass you there. And I wouldn't even be afraid to put him behind the plate. He won't embarrass you there. But has anybody ever just tried that? I mean, the kid's a great center fielder. And he's a off-the-chart second baseman. Plays third really well. There's room in the big leagues for guys like that. Now, don't overplay on that to where he quits hitting. Everything's always predicated on if you can hit. Well, he can hit. So by moving him around, I got to be careful, because I don't want to put so much on his plate and draw so much attention to that he forgets the thing called hitting. So, yeah, I'm not afraid to do that. I'm not afraid to move a guy around.
You gave Alek Manoah the opportunity to develop in the front end of games. He turned into a first-round draft pick. You take Michael Busch, who's played at first. He maybe played a couple games in the outfield for your squad last year. Moved him to second base for a few games, and he was drafted by the Dodgers in the first round as a second baseman. But what happens when you have a guy who comes up here and is struggling here in the Cape League? Maybe not at school, but in the Cape League. How do you approach that as the season goes on?
I think you try to find pieces of the schedule that you can rest them and maybe get them away from the game itself, and then turn an infielder over to Wiss, turn a pitcher over to Cookie, turn the hitter over to Mickey, and let them have a couple days to soothe the mind. They've all been through this. They've all slumped. Slump is a word you don't like to use, but it's real. And you try to rest them. At the same time, you're not quitting on them. You just give them a little time off. Still remember playing days in my mind. A day off sometimes hurts your feelings. Sometimes you feel like, he quit on me. He's given up on me. But in today's baseball world, a day off's accepted. It's accepted. People plan out days off for guys in the big leagues. So it's easier to sell to a kid. Take a couple days to rebuild yourself mentally. Well, I think that one thing you gotta be careful of is this league is really good, and you can crash and burn. You can go 1 for 40 and never find your swing. Last summer we had a couple guys that were hitting 140 that I knew could really hit, and I stayed with them, and we did exactly what I'm telling you. A couple days off, lots of BP, and they both found it, and they both had great second half of the season up here. Can it happen? Sure, it can happen. Can you crash and burn? I've seen that. Do you want it to happen? Never want to see a kid crash and burn. So you got to be man enough to say, hey, you might be in a little bit over your head, and try to get him to a different level in the summer, because you don't want him going back to school in a bad frame of mind. The coach doesn't want that. I don't want that. I want him to be better, or at least we've helped him do something. But I don't want to see a kid crash and burn.
What do you like about this year's squad?
Well, it is kind of young, and we've had a lot of body turnover, a lot more than I like. And I think when they look around, they see guys, they start clinging to each other, they start becoming a team. And there comes a time in a season when you can officially say, this is a team. Right now, it's just a collection of bodies, good bodies, good people, but they're not a team yet, and they all wear the same jersey. That's the commonality of the whole thing. But are they pulling for each other yet? I don't know that. That'll happen. I think once they're stable, once they know that I'm here, I'm not on a tightrope, you know. And I really want to get to that point. You know, I don't like bodies coming in for bad reasons. You know, like, and you know, I get it, College World Series, but when teams get there and you got 4 or 5 guys that don't show up here for 3 or 4 weeks into the season, that's tough, because then they automatically are on your team. Somebody goes home that's been here. I think there should be maybe a rule considered for that. But what I do like so far is that I have a lot of wide eyes. They're like open for suggestion. They're open for, I don't want to say it's not criticism. It's maybe a different angle, and I come from different angles. I'm not just like everybody else, you know. And you know, I like to sell the idea that you're playing for the game. You're playing your battles with the game. It's not the other team. The battle is with you playing the game. Can you throw strikes? Can you hit strikes? Can you respond on a daily basis to what it requires to play the game of baseball? Forget about the other team. You know, your 4 at-bats are precious. Your 3 innings on the mound are precious. And I think it's starting to sink in, you know, because most guys come up here, I'm a starter. Well, starters, for one thing, think they have to go 7 innings, 6 or 7 innings. And what I ran into last year is, you know what? If you do that, they're going to leave you at midsummer. And if you get them out there more often, they can learn more from one outing to the next. And we keep their number of pitches down, and we get more exposure to coaching them or helping them. And I felt like it worked last summer, and it grew. And I think so far, I think the young kids we took are getting better. Now there's been a bump in the road for a couple of them, and we have lost some games. Our objectives, obviously, is get into the playoffs. You know, and how many games can you go out there and play where you say, we're going to wear this one. We're down 7-0, so we're thinking we're going to wear this one. And at the end, we're going to give a guy an inning or this and that. And guess what? We were out of that game until late, and we made a little late inning run, and then in the 9th inning, we get the tying run on base. And, you know, it just kind of made it better for the fans. But they started to show you a little bit of a spark, and they're starting to realize the value of taking a walk, because that's how you score a bunch of runs in this league. And so have they turned it over and become a team yet? Not yet, you know, but I see them fighting for that. We'll turn the scoreboard around one time, and when we do, then we'll become a team.
Tom Holliday frequently fills out his lineup card with more than just names, numbers, and positions. Sometimes there's a little quote or a phrase, something like, "Don't beat yourself," or recently, "We're in first place." Stay tuned for more editions of A's in Depth. I'm Josh Schaefer, and we'll see you next time.